But we will not get out of this mess until the virus bans get relaxed. And I'm wondering if our state governments are putting as much effort into finding ways to get people back to work as they are to restrict them in their activities. I mean, what a difference that would make. I mean, I'll give you an example, all right? The restaurants in Victoria and New South Wales are open this week, and I'm thinking, here is the paperwork that you've got to get through, that they've all designed, they've had all these public servants designing it, that you've got to get through just to get some cafe or restaurant reopened. This is for Victoria, I'm sure the other states are the same, and to have no more than 20 customers sit there and eat. This is just the coronavirus paperwork. You've got, this is the initial thing you have to look at to go through to about what to do. These are all the guidelines you then have to study and go through. Then you've got to, what's this? Oh, some key points that you better bear in mind. You better go through that. Then you've got to stick up all these little handy posters that are printed out for you. You've got to put them up everywhere. Then you've got to, more posters, heavens. Then you've got to give your staff a questionnaire to fill out. More questions you've got to ask them. You've got to go through another checklist just to open this. And, of course, you've got to ask everyone who comes into your joint for name, phone number, etc., etc. And they've got to be all spaced out, and you can't make a dollar if you're a businessman with that kind of stuff. This is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. All this effort. All you need to say to them, this far apart, go your hardest, clean up every now and then, we'll inspect. Please. Anyway, joining me is the panel. Rita Panahi, Herald Sun columnist and Sky News host, and Daniel Wild, Director of Research at the Institute of Public Affairs. Daniel, where is the sense of urgency with reopening the economy?
Well, you're right, Andrew. The governments are dragging their feet on reopening the economy. Now, I think there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that they like the power, to be honest, that they've been given, this extraordinary emergency power that the bureaucrats and the health officials have. I think it's exemplified by Daniel Andrews in Victoria. So they don't want to let go of those powers. But I think it's also that if there was a quick and rapid reopening, it would essentially be an admission that they got it a bit wrong, that the lockdown measures were imposed perhaps too hard and went on for too long. And so what we saw, Andrew, I think the sort of the game was given away 4 or 5 weeks ago when the narrative changed. It was all about, flattening the curve to shift the infection rate over time so our health system could keep up. But then the narrative changed from that to elimination and suppression of the virus. Well, if that's the strategy, that's the strategy, but that was not the basis. And I think what the politicians learned is that the virus was not as virulent or as prevalent in Australia, and they couldn't do a backtrack, and now we're stuck in the position that we're in.
And all this paperwork. Rita, Daniel's a cynic, is a libertarian cynic, so am I. Tell us what's really going through the minds of our politicians. There's a deeper public interest, isn't it?
Well, the problem with this entire catastrophe is that these harsh measures are actually quite popular because when people are scared, they become very submissive and they will accept anything.
But who's been scaring them? It's the politicians in the first place.
Politicians, and let's not mince words here, the media has had quite a role to play in absolutely, we've heard breaking news reports to report someone has died from coronavirus, someone from a nursing home at the age of 80 has died. When have we ever had that? When have we ever had breaking news reports to say a single individual has died from an illness, from a virus? It just isn't something that's done normally. So I think people were genuinely scared. They thought this was the Spanish flu. And you're looking at the polling in this area, and the premiers who have closed their state borders, Queensland, WA, South Australia, Tasmania, they're getting polling saying this is popular. It may be decimating their tourism industries. It may be absolutely illogical and have no basis in evidence, but it's popular amongst the punters, and I think that's what's shaping their decisions.
Oh, fear is such a wonderful way to control the public and make them grateful to a politician for saving them. Daniel, these race riots, it seems to me that much of the left, at least the political class, is on the side of the rioters. I mean, it's so bad that in Britain, the Labor Party there wants the government to ban exports to America of equipment that US police could use against rioters. What does this tell you?
Well, what it tells us, Andrew, is that left-leaning and left-wing parties and governments around the Western world are completely detached from the mainstream of the citizens of their countries and the working and the middle classes. We know that, in Britain, it was the Labour voters that went for Brexit. In Trump, in the US, it was, union manufacturing workers that swung to Trump. In the most recent election here, the workers abandoned the Labour Party. That's because the left-wing parties around the Western world have policies that are diametrically opposed to the interests of working class, middle class people, whether it's identity politics, which says that if you're a low-wage, white, working class man or woman, you're the oppressor, you're the problem. Mass migration, which puts downward pressure on wages, climate change policy, which deprives people of manufacturing heavy industry jobs, higher taxes, which damages you if you go to work or start your own business. So this is just another example of the broader, great political realignment that's going on in the Western world as left-wing parties become more and more radical. They alienate the mainstream of the country, and those voters then go to the right.
You got a different theory, Rita, about why so many in the political class on the left seem to be in favour of the rioters?
Well, because they're on their side. There's not a rioter out there or a looter who's a Trump voter. Let's be honest. Yeah, this is protests that are very much from the left wing against the Conservatives, even though the state where this happened and the city where this happened, Minneapolis, you couldn't go get a more left-wing state. So that's Minneapolis. You've got a Democrat mayor, you've got a Democrat governor for Minnesota. City councils all Democrat except for one Green. So not a Republican in sight, but the Republican in the White House is somehow responsible for all this unrest and for all this hate and racial division. And the media has, again, we talked about the media fanning the scare campaign with COVID-19, and they're doing it now with this. It is absolutely disgraceful. Could you imagine if it was Trump supporters who were out there and they had elements of them who were lawless, Trump supporters who were looting, who were bashing people on camera, killed several people, burning down an affordable housing project and burning down shops? Could you imagine if the Republicans were encouraging them, making excuses for them, if you had celebrities putting up money for bail? Or it is just insane what we're seeing now.
If you saw one single Trump hat among those demonstrators, it'd be major news. But
Andrew, I did see there has been a couple of incidents where people with MAGA hats inadvertently or on purpose have been walking past, and I've seen one of it on one of these attacks on camera. A mob has set upon them and beaten them black and blue. This is, again, but that doesn't make the news. If it was the other way around, if someone in an Obama T-shirt was beaten purely for wearing an Obama T-shirt, it would lead every news service. These attacks, these politically motivated violent attacks, are getting next to no coverage. It is just a remarkable set of events we are seeing right now. It is gaslighting like I've never seen before.
But, going back, Daniel, to the British Labour Party not wanting to send US police protective gear, riot gear, Britain seems to forget that 9 years ago, Britain itself went through exactly the same kind of race riots after police shot dead a suspected criminal, the same arson, the same looting, the same violence, and in several British cities it went on for 6 days, the same kind of chaos. And it seems to me that the authority of Western governments over their populations is dangerously weak.
I think that's right, Andrew. And what's concerning is it's sometimes willingly weak. And what's happening right now in the United States, I think, shows a complete inversion of traditional values and morality. With the coronavirus lockdown, we had law enforcement officials that often with relish would stop people going to work or opening their business. But now those same law enforcement officials sit back while other people destroy businesses. So it's actually easier to destroy a business than it is to open and run your own business. And so that's the deeply concerning point. And I think it gets to your point, Andrew, about the political class being so detached. Most people just want to go to work, raise their kids, start a business, be law-abiding citizens, pay their taxes, which in part is meant to be there for law enforcement officials to allow them to undertake those activities.